I don't know. What do you think about that sort of delicate balancing act, and how do you think they're walking that line currently? Do you think they're doing a good job of walking the line between secrecy and marketing, or do you think that they need to reveal a little bit more in the next 2 months?
I think that what's tricky is that because this isn't a sequel to the Batman Arkham series, I think that it is tricky to market this game as it is because Batman is not the lead character. And I think that if this were a sequel, if this was Arkham Knight Part 2, where it takes place right after the Nightfall Protocol, I think that you would have a lot more traffic in terms of investment from players and from people who are anticipating this game. I think that the game is going to provide a lot of fun and a lot of elements and a lot of enjoyment. And I think it's going to catch people by surprise. But with that being said, it's a hard game to market because we're talking about characters who simply are not as popular. That's just an objective fact. Nightwing and Batgirl are not as popular as Batman is. And similarly, a lot of the villains that have been shown are not the Joker. And I know that, again, we've mentioned this in some of the collaboration that we've done today, but yeah, there's a lot of people who are getting tired of Joker in our community just because Joker was in all the Arkham games. He's been in a lot of the films, he's been in a lot of the animated stuff. But to the mainstream audience, that's what sells tickets. That's why they're
Yeah.
making a sequel
Does
to the
anybody
Joker
realize
film.
there's a reason for that? It's because they make more money every time they do that.
Exactly. And so I think that to take those most famous ticket selling elements out of a Batman story, I understand why there has been something of a lull in enjoyment of the trailers and a bit of trepidation from the player base to buy the game. And especially after we got Avengers, which was a lackluster superhero experience. I don't think to the fault of the developers. I think that they were trying something that just didn't quite work out. I think that they tried too hard to make a single player and multiplayer experience that didn't really service either one of those types of play style. I think Gotham Knights will ride that line a lot better. And I think that they will, again, likely have a story that features a lot of those elements that people are anticipating and hoping for. And a lot of the characters that aren't as popular as Batman, I think, will get a boost in popularity. I'm anticipating seeing a lot of Nightwing profile pictures once this game launches on Twitter. But with
True.
that being said, I think that the exclusion of Bruce Wayne is a hard thing to market. I think that if the point of the game was to find and rescue Bruce Wayne, there would be more investment as well. But when they're advertising the game as Batman is dead, move on, it puts everyone in a position where we've just seen the Star Wars sequels, which many were disappointed with, where it kind of had a similar outlook, where all these legacy characters are gone. It's like all these secondary characters and all these new characters are what you need to get invested in. But I would argue that looking back at something like Batman Beyond, that also did something fairly similar, but people really seemed to enjoy that take on the Batman mythology. So I feel that they are doing about as good as they can considering the circumstances of this game. With that being said, I feel that their priorities are perhaps a bit backwards. I'm not a marketing expert. I have not gone to college for marketing. I have gone to college for film, and I, to some degree, understand what audiences are looking for when I'm making something. And in terms of Gotham Knights, there has been a lot that I think that they've done right. I really enjoyed seeing that deep dive of the city. I liked seeing
Oh,
how
that
the
was excellent. That
customization
is the
worked.
best
Yeah.
piece of marketing they've released. It was excellent.
Oh yeah, by a long shot. Just getting to see how much you'll be able to explore. And that's the kind of thing that I think players are going to connect with. And one thing that I have been really picky about and really trying to get since like day one of this game's announcement is give us more villain reveals. I think that once we see some of the people that will actually get to fight, because as cool as Penguin is, we're probably not going to get a boss battle with him. And if we do, it's he's going to have a minigun or something. But show us those fan favorites. Show us Two Face. Show us Poison Ivy. Show us Harley Quinn. Let us see some of these characters. I don't think that you lose anything by showing who's involved in the game, especially if you don't quite let us in on how they operate in the story. But I'd love to see some of those villains, and I'd love to see more like we saw with that 15-minute Batgirl gameplay. I'd love to see another 15 minutes, maybe a little bit later in the story with another villain quest. I really would like to know how those villain quests work or how the story structure works because they've said it's not very linear. So I'd love to see some of those elements that they keep telling us about but not showing. And instead they show things that are cool but not really what I'd prioritize watching as a viewer. Like they keep showing us some of the alternate skins that you can wear, and that's fine and good, but that's not why I'm playing the game. I'm playing it for the story.
Me too.
I think that again, I keep saying it, but I think that they're just in a tricky spot where there's clearly things that they don't want to show us and clearly things they don't want us to know. My guess is there's going to be some plot twist within the first hour or two of the game, similar to The Last of Us Part 2. That was another game that kind of followed the same marketing pattern where they kept showing us footage and kept showing us gameplay, but everyone was like, there's something kind of off about this where it seems like they're not doing much of a deep dive. And it's because they were trying to hide the fact that Joel dies an hour into the game. And I think that they're probably doing something similar here. I feel that there is probably going to be some twist, some gimmick. There's the intention of me as a player being an hour or two into the game and being like, oh, that's cool. And, jumping into whatever they're doing. And so, and as great as those moments are, because games have done that successfully pretty frequently. Spider-Man actually did that very successfully with Doc Ock being the main villain. They kept advertising Mr. Negative, and within like the first hour of Spider-Man, it's like, oh, dang, Doc Ock is here. Yeah, this guy's definitely going to be Doc Ock by the end of the game. That was a really compelling twist, and it took the story in a different direction than the marketing had led us to believe. But I think that the other shoe that drops when you make a game like that is that as cool as that is when you're playing it, it's really only exciting the first time you play it because then you know what's coming and it makes it much harder to market. Uh, Spider-Man again, Doc Ock, I'd argue, really was the only A-list villain in that game. And so then the marketing has Rhino and Scorpion and Mr. Negative, which, they're all great villains. But then fans are sitting there like, where's Green Goblin? Where's Venom? Where's Doc Ock? And Doc Ock was in the game just being saved for. And so I think it's definitely a balancing act in terms of what you show to get people excited versus what you save so that you can surprise everybody when they play your game.
Yeah, and of course, what we're talking about right now. We're 2 months out from release. For all we know, next week they're going to drop the Batman trailer. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, maybe they've thought through all of this and they've calculated that, okay, based on market research or whatever, if we drop this tease about Batman 10 days before release or 3 weeks before release, and then we do this with Harley Quinn or like whatever it may be, whatever they formulated, because they do have a lot of heavy hitters and big names that they can utilize. Again, Harley Quinn going to be in the game, so that's a big one, particularly with Margot Robbie really popularizing the character, putting aside the hardcore fans that have known her since the '90s. But she's a super popular character. I would say she's A-list now. She's an A-list DC character. She's in the game, presumably. Then, of course, Batman. We know that he's at least in the game. At least he's in the Skype memo. Like we saw that in the opening trailer. Like he at least has some involvement. And of course, there are many other villains. The only villains we've seen are Mr. Freeze and the Penguin. Of course, there are going to be more villains than that. There's going to be more side missions. There's going to be that sort of thing. So obviously, Hush is being pretty seriously teased at this point with the Elliott Center and all those sort of things. So there's really a lot of things happening here in the game, and it's a delicate balancing act for them, and they have 2 months to really play with how much they reveal, how much they don't reveal. I, for one, at this point, I'm almost on the boat where you're so close that you might as well just let it happen and then let the audience be surprised and generate positive buzz and word of mouth. Because I feel like, with The Last of Us 2, the shock of that, going back to that, I feel like the shock of that reveal, it just shattered Twitter, right? I mean, it was just like insane where once you see those tweets of like, whatever you do, if you haven't played The Last of Us 2 yet, do not get on Twitter. Like, it's the most insane thing ever. This plot twist, you're never going to see it coming. You're like, oh shit, okay, I gotta buy this game right now. Like, I gotta get
Yeah.
on this. I haven't started it. And so part of me thinks that, and you're exactly right. The marketing, I didn't even think about it till now, but the marketing is somewhat similar in that sense where they're very opaque. Like The Last of Us 2, they would show like these sort of banal like sea line sort of stories of, it's like, oh look, here's Ellie with her girlfriend or whatever, and it's like, all right, this isn't like, there's other things here that you're not showing. We know that to be a fact, right? Like there's more happening here. And I'm getting the same vibe. I completely agree with you. I'm getting the same vibes from this game. It's like, oh, Red Hood. Like, I see that scene with Red Hood and the Penguin just like hanging out in a room together. Like, Penguin, you're not a villain in this game. Like that, you're just like a C-list character. the fact that Red Hood and Penguin are just like talking nonchalantly and casually in the same room really is emblematic of that he's not the main threat of the game. Mr. Freeze, okay, he's trying to freeze the city. It's like that's like a side mission. They showed us a side
Yeah.
mission with him, right? So those are the two real villains that we've seen. They've teased a couple of other ones. We haven't really seen much. And obviously, Court of Owls, yes. But hell, it wouldn't surprise me if they pull like you said, a Spider-Man PS4, where it's like we think the Court of Owls is the main villain, but maybe it is the Court of Owls and X, and of course, Mr. Negative was one of the main foremost villains of the game. And maybe it'll be a similar thing here, where it's not just the Court of Owls; it is also X character, it's also Y character, like whatever. Maybe it's Harley Quinn. I mean, we have no idea, and the fact that we are in this position 2 months out, where we're speculating so much and having these conversations, and people are interested in the conversations that about sort of predicting what's going to happen in the game, that is a good sign, and that does speak to positive things with their marketing. I would say that the challenge that they have is how they can get casual fans invested in those conversations, because at this point, what we fundamentally have is we have Red Hood and Penguin chatting together in a room about the Court of Owls, a villain that has existed for literally 11 years, as opposed to, of course, every other Batman villain we see has been around for 40 to 70 years or so, and has been in multiple movies, has been in multiple things. Like, we're dealing with characters that primarily have not been in any mainstream media interpretation of this lore and mythos, right? Like Red Hood, Nightwing, Batgirl. I guess in 1997 they kind of tried to use Batgirl in the movies, but fundamentally we've never seen him in any movie. Going to the Court of Owls, we've never seen them in any movie. Yes, they're in a great animated movie with Damian and Bruce, but that's an animated movie. Most people haven't seen that. So those are just a couple of examples of some of the marketing challenges that they have. But then if those A-listers are being used in covert ways that we don't yet know, that is a huge benefit that they can utilize. And going back full circle to the topic of the video and what we started talking about, I do think that Batman is going to be sort of utilized in that sort of way. And he's going to have this kind of like Joel kind of factor, shock factor into the game, where we're just going to be like, whoa, I did not think that this main character, again, Joel in Last of Us 2, and in this game, Batman, would be utilized in that way, or that would happen to them, or whatever, XYZ. You could fill in the blanks. Your guess is as good as mine. I don't even want to guess, because, well, I guess I did guess in this video, but like it's not all that important, because it's something that they're keeping close to the chest for a good reason. And really, we just have to wait until October 25th to know the breadth of that story.